I died 98 times before I learned how to smile like a monster. The first death was the worst. A rusted spear went through my chest so hard I felt my spine crack behind it. I still remember the sound. Wet, sharp, ugly. The system revived me 3 seconds later. But it never removed the pain. Even now, sometimes I wake up gasping, clutching my chest like the spear is still inside me. And the funny part, I was not a warrior. I was an honors student. 6 months ago, my biggest problem was missing my scholarship by 2 points because I got sick during finals. I survived on cheap coffee and 3 hours of sleep. I used to lie awake dreaming about taking my mother to Paris someday. Just once. Just to see her smile somewhere beautiful. Then the world ended. Or maybe humanity did. Because when I opened my eyes again, I was standing in a city that smelled like mud, blood, and rainwater left inside a grave. The sky above me had never once seen sunlight. The buildings leaned sideways like drunk corpses. Black mud swallowed the roads whole, and a voice welcomed me like I was already dead. Congratulations, Emma Walker. Humanity has selected you as its extinction condition. I laughed, actually laughed out loud, because I thought I was dreaming. Until the voice said something that made my entire body go completely still. Victory will restore your father to life. My father died 3 years ago, car accident, rainy night. My mother still cries when she thinks I am asleep. Sometimes I hear her whispering his name alone in the kitchen, not praying exactly, more like talking to someone who is never going to answer back. So when the system offered him back to me, I listened. You have been assigned the final boss class. Your objective is simple. Build an army. Kill the players. If humanity wins, your existence will be erased. If you win, the voice paused, almost like it was smiling. Your family becomes whole again. I should have refused, I know that now. God, I know that now. But grief makes monsters out of ordinary people. And I was so tired of losing everything. So I asked the question that ruined my life. What happens if I fail? The sky split open above the dead city. And for the first time, I heard screaming. Not one scream, millions of them, all at once, pouring from the crack in the sky like they had been waiting for permission. Then the system answered me. You die in both worlds. That was the day I became the Queen of the Dead. The city was called Black Hollow. At least that is what the ghosts whispered when the wind moved through the broken streets. Nothing lived there, not properly. The houses leaned like they were tired. The mud swallowed everything that touched the ground. The air smelled like grief itself, and everywhere I looked, I saw eyes watching me. From shattered windows, from rooftops, from beneath the soil. The system gave me my first objective 2 hours after I arrived. Subjugate the headless cavalry. Simple words. Impossible task. I found them waiting beyond the city gates. Dozens of armored riders standing completely still beneath dead trees. No heads, no voices. Only rusted black armor and horses breathing slow smoke into the cold air. The moment I stepped forward, they charged. I died 30 seconds later. A spear tore through my chest. Another split my shoulder apart. I remember falling into the mud while horse hooves crushed my ribs into pieces, one by one, like breaking sticks. Then darkness. Then pain. Then breathing again. The system revived me beside the city gates. Death count. 1, I threw up immediately, not because of blood, because my body remembered dying, every single detail. And the memory did not fade the way memories are supposed to. That was the beginning. Every monster in Black Hollow hated humans with a rage so old it had turned into something else entirely. Something religious. And unfortunately for me, I smelled human. The ghost generals tried to drown me in black water. The vampire knights ripped out my throat in the dark. The flesh giants crushed my skull beneath their hands like wet fruit. Once, the plague witches melted the skin off my arms while singing lullabies to each other. Gentle little songs, like they were putting children to sleep. The system revived me every single time, again and again and again. 98 deaths. 200 moments where the fear nearly made me beg the system to just erase me permanently, to let it end. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered my mother crying alone in our apartment. I remembered my father teaching me how to make burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, standing in the kitchen in his old slippers, acting like they were the best thing he had ever cooked. I remembered what it felt like to have a whole family, and somehow, that hurt more than dying, so I kept going. 6 months passed slowly, the way suffering always does. And slowly, the monsters stopped attacking me on sight. The headless cavalry bowed first, then the ghost generals. Then the Crimson Court of Vampires opened their iron gates to me. Not because they trusted me, but because they saw something changing inside me that even I had not noticed yet. My human scent was fading. The system called it evolution. I called it losing pieces of myself. I started staring into broken mirrors and barely recognizing the girl looking back. My eyes had turned crimson. Cold mist followed every step I took. Shadows moved when I breathed, but the worst change was not physical. It was emotional. I was becoming less afraid of monsters and more afraid of humans. Then I unlocked my second ability. Skill acquired, soothing. At first, I thought it was useless, until I touched one of the ghosts, a woman wearing a burned wedding dress. Standing alone at the edge of a ruined street, swaying slightly like she was still hearing music from a night that ended centuries ago. The moment my hand touched her face, I saw everything: the fire, the screaming, men dragging her through the streets while her husband begged on his knees. I saw children buried beneath burning houses. I saw soldiers laughing while an entire village burned alive inside their own church. I saw mothers holding dead babies while the sky turned black and nobody came. I saw it all. And suddenly I understood why this land hated humanity so completely. Black Hollow was never born evil. It was made this way. Long ago, the province had been beautiful. Golden fields and warm homes, schools filled with children, a beloved baroness who walked among her people instead of watching them from above. They were genuinely happy, too happy. The neighboring nobles grew jealous of what they had, so they poisoned the baroness, murdered her husband, slaughtered every servant in the castle. Then they sealed the roads and butchered the entire province without mercy or reason. Nobody escaped, not even the animals. The women suffered the most. And when the massacre finally ended and silence replaced the screaming, something answered the hatred left behind. The sky cracked open above the ruined land. A voice descended. Until their resentment fades, until humanity remembers what it has done, this land shall never know peace. Every soul remained trapped, rotting, screaming, waiting centuries for someone to remember that they had once been people. I cried after seeing their memories, not polite tears, not quiet tears. I collapsed beside that ghost in her burned dress and cried until blood dripped from my nose into the dirt. Ugly, heaving, uncontrollable grief for strangers who had been dead for centuries, and for the first time. The monsters cried with me. That was the moment they truly accepted me as their queen, not because I was powerful, because I mourned beside them. After that, the army grew fast. The Hollow Legion marched beneath black banners. The headless cavalry formed the front lines. Ghost weavers drifted through the skies, singing old funeral songs into the wind. Flesh giants carried siege towers on their backs without effort. Vampire nobles commanded the night patrols with cold, precise discipline, and at the center of all of them stood me, Emma Walker, former honors student, future enemy of humanity. Then the horns sounded across the hills. The players had arrived. Thousands of lights appeared on the horizon like a moving city. Heroes, knights, saints, archmages, people pulled from Earth who treated this world like a game with a prize at the end. Some of them looked excited, their hands already gripping their weapons. Some looked terrified, some already regretted coming. Many were descendants of the nobles who had ordered the massacre centuries ago, but others were completely innocent. And deep down, I knew that, which made everything so much worse. The players were not weak. That was our first mistake. For 6 months, the monsters of Black Hollow had prepared for war, believing that centuries of hatred would be enough. It was not. The players came prepared like executioners who had done this many times before. Veterans, raid survivors. People who had conquered every kind of dungeon and boss this system could produce. Some carried holy weapons forged specifically to destroy undead flesh. Others wore armor engraved with anti-curse runes that glowed even in full darkness. The archmages arrived floating above the battlefield like living natural disasters, calm and methodical as they calculated angles of destruction. And the heroes? God, the heroes were monsters too. The first day of war was a massacre, just not the one we expected. The Hollow Legion collapsed beneath walls of holy fire. Ghost weavers screamed as silver chains ripped their souls apart mid-flight. The headless cavalry charged through the northern fields and were erased by light magic before reaching enemy lines. Vampire knights burned alive beneath sunlight artifacts pulled from another world entirely. The players moved with perfect, merciless efficiency, and for the first time since becoming the final boss, I felt real fear, not for myself, for them, for my monsters. For the dead people who had trusted me enough to follow me into a war I had promised we could win. The battlefield became hell by sunset. Bodies covered the black mud. The rivers ran dark, and everywhere I looked, my army was breaking apart. Then I saw one of the ghost children, a little girl missing half her face, one of the first souls I had ever soothed. She was crawling through the mud on her hands while a player raised a blessed spear above her head like she was nothing. And something inside me snapped completely. The system felt it, because dozens of crimson windows exploded open across my vision all at once. Final boss authority released. The sky darkened instantly. The wind stopped. Even the battlefield itself seemed to hold its breath. Every monster turned toward me at the same moment, waiting. I slowly stood from the throne wagon overlooking the field, and for the first time since arriving in Black Hollow, I walked toward the players. Alone. At first, they laughed. I understood why. I looked harmless. A pale girl in black armor limping through corpses with blood running down her hands and no weapon in sight. Then the first knight attacked me. His sword was legendary grade, wholly enchanted, designed specifically to kill things like me. The moment the blade touched my skin, I used my authority and deleted the blessing from existence. The holy light vanished instantly. The knight's expression went from confidence to confusion to fear. Then I tore his throat open with my bare hand. The battlefield went quiet for one long second. Then the players realized something was wrong. Their weapons were not working the way they should. I kept walking forward. An archmage cast a gravity spell strong enough to compress stone into powder. My knees shattered. I heard the bones snap beneath me. Then I watched them knit back together while I kept moving, slower but still moving. A knight severed my left hand completely. I watched it drop into the mud beside me. Then black flesh slowly crawled from the wound and rebuilt the arm while he stared in open horror. By then the fear had already started spreading through their ranks. Not panic yet, just fear, the ancient human kind. The kind soldiers feel when they finally understand that the thing walking toward them cannot be stopped by anything they are holding. Then I screamed. Not words. A battle cry filled with so much grief and rage that the dead themselves answered it. Every monster on the battlefield rose again with fire in their eyes. The Hollow Legion charged harder than before. The ghost weavers flooded the sky like a living storm. Even dying vampires crawled back into the fight on broken limbs, tearing players apart with nothing but their hands. The war changed in an instant. Now humanity was the side retreating. Then the strongest player came for me, a man called the Lion Saint, level 93, winner of 7 Spectre games. He moved faster than I could track. His spear pierced my stomach before I saw him move. His sword split open my ribs. He carved through me again and again while holy fire exploded across the mud around us. For the first time during the war, I came close to dying permanently, and honestly, part of me wanted to let it happen. I was so tired. Then I remembered my father smiling in our kitchen on a Sunday morning, and I grabbed the spear still buried in my chest with both hands, looked directly into the Lion Saint's terrified eyes, and smiled, not like Emma, not like a student, like the final boss. Then I erased the concept of sharpness from his weapon. The spear crumbled into dust between his fingers. He froze, just for 1 second. 1 second was enough. I drove my claws straight into his heart. The battlefield broke after that. Not physically, mentally. The moment the Lion Saint fell, the players came apart. Heroes retreated mid-charge. Mages lost control of their own spells. Some soldiers dropped their weapons entirely and ran without looking back. Humanity was afraid of monsters again, for the first time in a very long time. The death of the Lion Saint should have ended the battle. It did not, because grief makes humans just as dangerous as monsters. The moment his body hit the ground, a woman screamed, not from fear, not from despair, pure rage. Her name was Sarah Vale. Vice captain of the Saints' raid party, rank 87, owner of 12 legendary artifacts, and apparently completely beyond reason. She ripped the Lion Saint's remaining weapons from his body with shaking hands while holy fire crackled across her armor. Tears poured down her face. But she was smiling at the same time, which was somehow more frightening than the tears. Her voice broke on the sound. So the old man finally died. One of the surviving players grabbed her arm. "Sarah, fall back. We already lost the front line." Another screamed at her while trying to heal a missing arm. "We cannot beat the final boss. Retreat before midnight." Sarah shoved them both away hard enough to knock them off their feet. "No." Then she looked across the field toward me. And I felt something in her gaze I had not felt from any player before. Not greed, not ambition, pure personal hatred. "You think killing him means you win?" she shouted. She raised the Lion Saint's spear toward the dark sky. The holy weapon burned white-hot like a dying star. Then she laughed, wild and broken and genuinely terrifying. "The reward for killing the final boss is $1 billion. The battlefield went still. Even exhausted soldiers stopped retreating to turn toward her voice. Sarah grinned through blood-covered teeth. $1 billion, enough money to buy kingdoms, enough to make gods beg." She pointed the spear toward Black Hollow. "So what if our leader died? We take the reward ourselves. Kill the monsters, take the money, all of it." Her remaining fighters hesitated. Fear was written clearly on every face, but greed is older than fear. One warrior slowly stood beside her. "If we are dying anyway, I want my share first." A wounded mage laughed in a way that had nothing to do with happiness. "Yeah, let's finish this." Then they charged again, madness in their eyes, and suddenly I started laughing, not loudly, not proudly, quietly, like someone finally understanding a terrible joke that was always about them. Sarah frowned. "What is so funny?" I looked around the battlefield slowly, at the burning corpses, at the ghost children crying in the mud, at the humans killing for money while calling themselves heroes and champions of the light. Then I said quietly, "How maddening." My voice sounded tired, ancient, like something worn smooth by centuries of the same story repeating. How crude. Cold wind moved across the field. And yet, I raised my crimson eyes toward them. We were the ones called demons. The final battle, the second wave, was worse than the first, because now both sides had stopped fighting for victory. They were fighting from pure emotion. The ghosts fought from centuries of buried hatred. The players fought from greed, fear, rage, and the kind of desperation that stops listening to reason entirely. Nobody held anything back. Sarah was devastating. She tore through the battlefield like a natural disaster with a name. The Lion Saint's artifacts amplified her beyond human limits. Holy chains ripped apart ghost generals. Sunfire grenades vaporized entire squads. One swing of her spear erased dozens of specters at once. Even the vampire nobles began pulling back from her advance. But Sarah paid for every single step in blood. Ghost claws ripped open her stomach. A cursed arrow took one of her eyes. A flesh giant crushed her left arm into useless wreckage. She kept fighting anyway, laughing, crying, screaming at the sky in between. Hours passed, then more hours, until finally there was almost no one left standing on either side. The Hollow Legion had collapsed. The remaining players had fallen one by one. The field was completely silent except for the wind and the distant sound of something still burning, until only two people remained. Me and Sarah. The battlefield around us looked like the end of the world. Black smoke filled the air. Corpses covered the ground so completely I could barely see the soil beneath them. Sarah stared at me across the wreckage, breathing heavily. One eye gone, armor in pieces, blood coming from so many wounds I could not count them, yet somehow, still smiling, you know. She coughed and spat red into the mud. I really hate people like you. Then she threw something small at me, a glass sphere. It shattered against my chest. Silver dust exploded into the air around us. Truth powder activated. And suddenly, her expression froze completely. Because beneath the shadows, beneath the monstrous aura and the crimson eyes and the black mist curling around my feet, she saw the truth. I was human. Sarah stared at me for a long moment, then slowly. She started laughing again, softly this time, almost like she pitied me. Oh my God, you are human. I looked at the battlefield around us, at the ghost children she had slaughtered for money, at the burned souls still crawling through the mud, at the girl in the wedding dress who had finally stopped moving. Then I answered quietly. Shocking, right? Sarah's smile faded. I took one step toward her. Those ghosts were human once too. Another step. You killed them without hesitation. The black mist around me thickened and rose. And now you call them monsters because they finally learned how to hate back. Sarah tightened her grip on the spear. Her one remaining eye watched me without blinking. I looked directly into it. And for the first time since the war began, my voice truly sounded like a queen. Your ancestors built this hell. Tonight, I raised my hand slowly toward her. That debt gets repaid. The final battle lasted 4 hours. 4 straight hours of blood and pure destruction. Sarah used every artifact she had left, reality-cutting blades, gravity spheres that collapsed space, holy detonations that left craters 10 feet deep, lightning seals that struck faster than thought. Half the battlefield ceased to exist during our fight. Mountains cracked. The dead beneath our feet turned to ash and drifted away. And slowly, I started losing, not emotionally, physically. I had used 2 nullifications earlier in the war, one against the Lion Saint, one against the Archmages. Only one remained. And Sarah was too fast, too smart, too utterly willing to die. So I waited, minute after agonizing minute, taking hits I could barely survive, waiting for one specific moment, because my authority resets at midnight, and when the broken clock tower behind us finally struck 12. I smiled. Sarah saw it the instant it happened, and for the first time in our entire battle. She looked genuinely afraid. The system windows exploded open across my vision. Authority reset complete. Sarah lunged forward with everything she had left. Too late. I raised my hand and nullified the source of her power entirely. Every artifact died in the same instant. The holy spear turned gray and dull. The magic armor cracked apart like old stone. Every divine blessing evaporated from her body like smoke in the wind. Suddenly, Sarah was just human again, exhausted, bleeding, mortal. She stared at her shaking hands in silence, then slowly looked up at me. Monster. Maybe she was right, because I killed her anyway. The war ended beneath a broken sky. The curse weakened, not because humanity was destroyed. Because humanity finally remembered. The surviving players learned the truth, what this place had been, what their ancestors had done to it. The monsters were not born from darkness, they were made from grief. And for the first time in centuries, the dead were properly mourned. Then the sky opened. Light poured through the clouds. Warm and gentle, the way light should always feel but rarely does. The ghosts began disappearing one by one. The burned bride smiled at me before she turned to ash, not the hollow, empty smile she wore when we first met. A real one. the kind that reaches the eyes. The headless cavalry saluted silently as they faded. The vampire queen closed her eyes with something that looked like peace. Their resentment was finally over, and as the last soul disappeared into the light, the system spoke one final time. Final condition complete. Returning player Emma Walker. I woke up in a hospital bed. Rain tapped softly against the windows. My mother was asleep in the chair beside me, still holding my hand even in sleep. For a long moment, I just stared at the ceiling, thinking maybe it had all been a dream. Then the hospital door opened, and my father walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. Exactly the way he used to, I stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to speak. He looked up and saw me watching him, and he smiled. "Hey, pumpkin," just like that, after all the death, after all the monsters, after 98 times of dying in ways no human being should ever have to feel, I finally broke. Not like a queen, not like a final boss, just like a daughter who got her family back. The end. Thanks for watching until the very end. If this story pulled you in, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more dark stories, cursed worlds, impossible choices, and sleepless nights, subscribe to the channel. Until next time. See you in the next nightmare.